Hey everybody, it's Matthew Jarrett, and welcome back to the channel. We are back, and I did say we, as we have not just one person writing for this channel anymore, we have two new added people to the team. Currently, we are shifting over to the video essay format instead of the vlogs we were doing, so without further ado, the art of the setup. How does one make an emotion truly earned? That's a question that has bugged me ever since I heard the term earned emotion. To be honest, I always naively thought that something sad or happy or what have you had to occur to make something emotional. This led me into the realm of sentimentality, also known as I don't care about this character's death territory, also known as Hallmark. Because Hallmark. I get it if you like it. But it's bad writing. Anyway, at the time before I understood this, my stories were emotional, as I am an emotional guy, you know? But they lacked the earned aspect of emotion that made the greatest stories so impactful. I will admit, I still struggle with this from time to time. At least in very early drafts. Anyway, so Moon Studios came out with a little game back in 2015 called Ori and the Blind Forest, and oh my gosh, that game. On my first playthrough, I was brought to tears 3 times due to a Metroidvania platformer. A platformer, as in something like Mario. No offense to Mario, but the story's lacking. Still a fun game though. For the uninitiated, Metroidvania games are platforming games that allow you to traverse a wide open world map, but it's a platformer. I just find it a really cool combination of the open world RPG and the platformer. It's just fun and I love it. Anyway, I had to ask why Ori and the Blind Forest made me want to bawl my eyes out so much. And I think I figured out the answer. It's all about that setup. That setup. No sentimentality. And this reference to 2014 pop music is dead. Oh my gosh, what am I doing with my life? Why do I do this to myself? But the statement is true. Without mastery over the story's setup and framing, we would never experience such an amazing story and the emotional weight that it brings. We're going to go into spoiler territory today. Okay, so if you haven't played the game, go and play it. Then come back. Unless you don't care about spoilers. Then stay. And don't go play the game. Or go watch a playthrough. That's also fine too. Those are fun. But we're not going to be talking about the game's protagonist Ori and her mother Neru. We are actually going to be talking about Kuro. For those who haven't played Ori, Kuro is the massive black owl that acts as the main antagonist, destroying the light of the spirit tree and plunging the entire forest into decay and darkness. Wow, that's a fun way to put things. We meet her when the player arrives at the spirit tree for the first time. There, the spirit tree gives exposition of why the forest is blinded and how Kuro attacked the light ceremony. At this point in the game, Kuro is framed as a malevolent force bent on destroying everything, as most video game villains do, you know? But this is what makes Kuro's setup so good. Immediately when she's introduced, Kuro is in total contrast with the surrounding area, covered in white light, while Kuro is black as she is a creature of the dark, thus giving us a major contrast between her and the player. We see Kuro slaughtering many of Ori's brethren until she finally rips Cian, the light of the spirit tree, crushing and throwing her into the forest. The cutscene is framed as an explanation of the game's backstory as to how the forest went from so peaceful at the beginning to the horrible nightmare landscape that it is. And that killed me 1700 freaking times my first playthrough. You hear that? That is the sound of a man in his early 20s, slowly dying inside because of video games. Let's all appreciate that beautiful sound. By framing it like this... Oh my gosh. By framing it like this, the establishing shots of the light ceremony in the spirit tree, combined with the peaceful music, causes the player to anticipate something bad is about to happen. Thus, the tension builds for roughly 20 seconds or so, as we are slowly taken on a brief tour of the light ceremony and lulled into a false sense of safety we know is about to fall apart due to the framing and setup. Once this tension has built up, we finally see Kuro for the first time, which makes her actions all the more angering, thus setting up her character as well. I'm going to backtrack right quick, okay? Just a little bit of backtracking, okay? At the very beginning of the game, we are introduced to Ori and Neru. We see their mother-daughter relationship through a montage of them building a bridge and having so much fun with it. The sequence makes me overjoyed every time I play it. Like, I just, every time I hear the soundtrack, I just want to just jump for joy. It's so happy. This, mixed with the forest's sudden death, followed by Neru's heartbreaking death and Ori's struggle as she crawls her way out of her home only to die on some log, you can't help but feel the extreme loss. Their loss can only be turned to anger once you see Kuro's Massacre of the Light ceremony, knowing that she was the one who took Neru from you. It feels as if some great monster has come into your life and taken every good thing away from you in a senseless act of violence. Really, in this early cutscene, we feel the injustice and horror of the whole situation. The setup here has made the game's story personal to the player. I want you to pay close attention to that statement. The anger at Kuro would never have been as impactful as it was if the game had not set up the story the way it did. Without making Kuro's attack personal, she would have been a generic video game villain. But with the setup, the rage the player now feels fuels them to continue on to see the force of Nibel recovered and Kuro defeated. Along with this, it paints her as this villain to utterly hate, which is extremely important as the setup does another thing to her character. But with the setup, the rage the player now feels fuels them to continue on to see the force of Nibel recover and Kuro defeated. Along with this, it paints her as this villain to utterly hate, which is extremely important as the setup does another thing to her character. About 2/3 of the way through the game, the audience is shown a little cutscene called Kuro's Tale 2, Her Pain, and this 2-minute clip about made me bawl out my eyes when I first saw it. Like, I'm not joking, I about cried. If there is one thing that this game can do amazingly, it is to make its characters' stories personal to the player. When this cutscene initiates, Ori stumbles upon a nest where she finds a lone egg. For the first time, we understand why Kuro attacked the light ceremony. We see her feeding her children, which I discovered are actually called owlets. I actually had to look that up, it's kind of cool. But the look in her eyes is nothing but love and care for these children. As babies are wont to do, they beg for more food. A request Kuro obliges, of course. You know, gotta feed your kids, you know? Once she leaves her owlets, though, the light ceremony begins and the spirit tree's light creeps like a mist through the forest. As I mentioned above, Kuro is a creature of the dark. The game will accept to have a yin-yang-esque dichotomy to its main characters. Ori and the spirit tree are of the light, Neru and Kuro are of the dark. But this difference isn't a good and evil one, it's just a physical distinction, really. A distinction that ends up killing Kuro's children. The light of the spirit tree kills the owlets while Kuro is away, hunting for their food. She realizes too late what is happening and flies as fast as possible to save them, accompanied by a swell of intense and emotional music. Upon finding their bodies, her gaze is that of horror. Everything makes sense about her character. I would argue that the previous framing and setup of her character, being that of someone who is angry to the point of mass murder, allows for this reveal to be so emotionally impactful. Her whole characterization is flipped on its head. Where we used to hate Kuro, we now feel for her. What this provides is an intense emotional rush where all of a sudden we feel for the very character we once hated. And this is because we see our own situation in Kuro's, humanizing her in such a way that we can't help but cry. The last place that Kuro's setup hits home is in the ending, where all promises ought to have a payoff. While the setup thus far has truly made this game's story emotionally impactful and amazing, it gives the ending its full weight. In the end, we find Kuro chasing down Ori, as she has just restored the last element of light, the element of warmth. All that's left is to return Cian to the spirit tree, and the forest will be restored. But Kuro hunts Ori through the fires that are now erupting throughout the forest. It is in this moment that we see the two mother figures come together, Neru and Kuro. When this happens, Neru finds Ori broken before Kuro. Being a mother, Neru rushes to Ori's protection despite the danger. It is in this moment that we see Kuro understand something. She sees the loss she's about to inflict on Neru, understanding that pain, and realizes that the fires are creeping up on her last egg. In a sudden reversal of character, Kuro grabs Cian, flying her to the spirit tree and restoring the light of Nibel. but this comes at the cost of her life. This moment makes sense as Kuro's main character motivation is to protect her child, but without the audience understanding Kuro's motives, we would be left wondering why the heck she just suddenly goes and restores the forest. Really, the story makes no sense without the previous setups the game has provided. It goes back to Chekhov's gun. If there's a gun hanging on the wall at the beginning of the story, it better go off by the end. Here, the last egg is Chekhov's gun by providing character motive, and therefore a reason for her sudden reversal. Without the heavy setup that the developers at Moon Studios did, this game would not be able to tell the immensely powerful story it does. We see Kuro as a monster at first, and that idea is what frames the picture of her for the rest of the game. But this ends up being good as it allows the audience to hate her, then empathize with her, and then in the end root for her as she goes and restores the light in a stunning character reversal. But this final setup goes on to add one more amazing emotional moment. In the end, we see Ori in Neru's cave, but now all the characters have been painted on the rock together as a family, and Kuro's last egg is next to it. The last moment of the game shows it hatching, proving that Kuro's sacrifice was not in vain, and that her legacy will go on. Without our hate and eventual love for Kuro, we would have never felt the way we do about the last second of the story. Thus, Kuro's tale ends, and its impact could not have been as powerful without that setup. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. We are coming out with a new video on June 19th. It's going to be on Blake 7 and creating a dystopian society effectively. It is by our artist Marshall Tinkersley. If you have seen any artwork on this channel or on our website, he is the man responsible for it. He does an amazing job, and he's also a great writer, and we're all looking forward to it. So please stay tuned. If you wish to continue the discussion on the setup and framing devices, please give us a comment. If you have any suggestions about our content or for possible content, please comment. We are a brand new channel and we are open to feedback. So yeah, thank you guys so much, and we hope you enjoyed it. Have a good one.